Good afternoon and welcome everyone to Ohio, the Office Hour Live. It's a program of the Community and Economic Development Unit here at Central State University's Cooperative Extension Service. Also with me, my colleagues, Amber Twitty and Ambrose Moses, and together we make up the Community and Economic Development team here at Central State. As you may know, Community and Economic Development is a broad field. The focus is on listening to the needs of communities and working with communities to solve problems and build on assets and gifts. And largely, if you think about community economic development, a lot of times you might think about infrastructure development, right? So building projects and roads and so forth, and that's a big piece of it. There's the human side of it. So there you're talking about workforce development programs, for example, or reducing barriers, which we do through our record sealing program, for just as one example. And then in between those two, the human and the infrastructure, are the businesses and the organizations that we work with through our small farm focus, urban focus, and also through our business development small business development focus. So with that, as a brief introduction about our work here at Central State University, we will be dropping our contact information into the chat. So please, at any point, feel free to contact any one of us, Amber, Ambrose, or myself, if you have any questions about community economic development, how we can serve your community. I am pleased, super appreciative of Gwen Stewart for coming to be with us today. And Gwen has been just an amazing colleague in this community development space. She is the community development educator for level 4 for the Ohio State University Extension based out of Noble County. She provides research-based programming through community development that helps build sustainable and livable communities through civic engagement and collaboration. And I invited her to come to speak to one specific topic, and that's the idea of tourism, capturing the tourism economy. And she's going to share one strategy, which is marketing a scenic byway. And so we'll let her in a minute talk to us or walk us through a PowerPoint presentation. But Gwen, could we start off with first, is there something more you'd like to do to introduce yourself, and then to introduce the topic, capturing that sort of that tourism economy as part of your strategy, your community strategy for growing a prosperous future?
Sure. Well, if you don't know, Noble County is southeastern Ohio. We're located in the Appalachian portion of the state, so rural, predominantly rural. A lot of beautiful scenic outdoor recreation opportunities in our county. And so as we've learned more about the outdoor recreation sector and the economy of outdoor recreation in the United States, it's just really presented as an opportunity for us. We are also a traditional coal community, so a lot of coal, turn of the century, underground mining as well as surface mining in our county. And so there's a lot of acreage in our county that was once owned by AEP Ohio that has recently transitioned over to the Department of Natural Resources, again, for outdoor economic recreation use. A lot of hunting and fishing on that, close to 10,000 acres. And so we're just really beginning to pay more attention to this as an opportunity for economic growth. As you look at the data, outdoor rec in the U.S. is 2% of the GDP. So it's 459.8 billion in the last report that I saw. So it's definitely something to pay attention to.
Yeah, thank you for that. So really a critical sector, and I think too it captures, what you're going to show us is a way to capture when you're thinking about towns, smaller communities, and this is, of course, we're on a series. This is the final session in a series in September. If you haven't gotten to the other sessions in this series, We will be posting these to YouTube, and so go back to our YouTube channel at Central State University Extension, and you can see some of those other strategies the communities are using to revitalize their community. And so we've walked through everything from entrepreneurship as a strategy, to infrastructure development, rebuilding or fixing up your downtowns and your historic buildings, to how you do deep community engagement, and also placemaking as strategies for mobilizing your residents to make a change in your community. So we've covered all those. Make sure you go back and catch those. It's in a series called Heartland Rising. So you can look for that tagline and you'll get there. But when we started this series, we talked about, right, there's different capitals that you have to work with, different sort of building blocks, that resources, assets that you have to work with. And a couple of those we've talked about, for example, human capital, right? That's and entrepreneurs are a subset of that. And then today we're really thinking about, your cultural capital, that is the history and the stories, is an important part of this that you want to capture, that your town has to offer, so that unique element. But also then a huge piece is, of course, your natural capital that you have to build on. And especially in rural communities, small towns, that's an important opportunity that you have to capture those tourism dollars, that outdoor sector that Gwen talked about. So we're really excited to have you, Gwen, to talk about, one way to do that, which is through the Scenic Byway marketing, a Scenic Byway. And so if you would, just to walk us through how to do this.
Sure, this is my contact information. And just going to take a few minutes to talk about scenic byways, give you some basic information on how the programs work nationally and in the state of Ohio. I love this thought that the destination is never a place, but a new way of looking at things. And as you'll see along our scenic byway, really taking the scenic route makes you take a moment and look over things as you're traveling. Our objectives for today, again, to talk about the National and Scenic Byway programs, providing you some information on how community and economic development folks can expand a byway and also market a byway. And so just to kind of start at the national level, the National Byways Program is administered through the Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Administration. And the goal of that at the national level is to recognize, protect, and promote some of the most outstanding roads across the nation. And they do that through a designation process. In 91, they established the program, and it was further added legislation and enhanced in 98 and 2005. And it's essentially the national program designates and helps with funding. So when you are a national byway, you can access additional funding for grants, enhancements, as well as conservation. And it also helps, as Eric mentioned, local communities in the tourism industry. There are 37 All-American roads, 150 national scenic byways, and there are federally designated byways as well at 184. So in February of last year, more than 1,200 state designated scenic byways across the nation as well. And our byway is an Ohio scenic byway. It's not yet nationally designated. We're working on that process. So in Ohio, you work with the Ohio Department of Transportation to help designate your road or your system of byways. And they give you a variety of historical or intrinsic resources that are their guidelines. As you see here on the map, they kind of crisscross the state from one corner to the next. So the white lines are each a byway. You can find these byways with the byway confidence markers that are signs that coordinate with the state route signage along the byways. The Ohio white trillium flower is the iconic general byway sign. And as you'll see sort of there in the middle in the center, some byways also have unique byway signage like the one along the Ohio River, the scenic byway. So there are 26, and they kind of, by alphabetical order here. We picked Appalachian Byway, so we'd be toward the top of the list. But why a scenic byway? With the pandemic and some of the changes in tourism with the pandemic, we're seeing in the data that road trips are relevant. 33% of consumers are still choosing destinations that they can drive to. And so this past summer, I had the opportunity to go to the Ohio State Fair and promote our byway. And the lead question I would ask as people were kind of passing by me at the ODOT um, display there was, do you like to take the scenic route? And I was surprised at how many people would stop and say, you know what, I really do. And so then I would share information about the state's byways with them. And so our byway coordinator said this about our byway: there's so much culture and beauty in Appalachia. And so that's really what we want to share with the rest of the state. We want to share our autumn views, the history of the Appalachian people. We want to share our museums and our other opportunities for, fine dining, etc. And so I touched on this earlier, but this is a great piece that shows the research on outdoor recreation. And as you look at this, you'll see it's bigger than oil and gas. It's bigger than motor vehicle manufacturing and air transportation and even the motion picture industry. So it's something to really pay attention to if you have these assets in your community. And it could be anything that includes this wide list of activities, from hunting and fishing, as I mentioned in our area. We have a lot of folks who travel into our rural area from the cities during the various hunting seasons, RVing and motorcycling, bicycling. There's some good research out of West Virginia University that shows in the US an estimated 50 million people, or 20% of Americans, mountain bike, for instance. So mountain bike trails and cycling as an option might be a good thing to think about. And these riders spend an average of $382 a trip. And in addition, they take up to 2 vacations a year that are specifically for mountain bike riding. So that's just one of these areas that you might think about. So for us, because Noble County is located on Interstate 77, we have two exits, exit 28 and 25 in our county. At last count, our tourism was around 7 million. We have 4 hotels, so we try to encourage tourism to fill our hotels because that is the lodging tax that helps fund our marketing dollars for tourism. And we have an estimated about 18,000 travelers a day that come by us on that highway. And then when you look at this map from us in the center in the blue out to how many people could we touch if we were an hour drive or 2 hour drive or 4 hour drive away, it just gives you an idea of how many people might be coming through the area that you could touch from a tourism perspective. And again, I hit on a minute ago, that we have some coal area. This map kind of shows you the wilds, which is a partnership with the Columbus Zoo. It's a very large natural area that is a tourist destination, so it's just kind of in our backyard. We also have some AEP recreation land that I mentioned that is now under the DNR, and there's camping and hiking, hunting and fishing there. And so we thought about, what we have, and we thought the byway made sense. And so the byway system in Ohio gives you these kind of types that you can think about. And we'll go through these just briefly. So you might have something in your area that is an artifact or structural, something that's historic or prehistoric that you would want to focus in on, or a cultural type byway. So you noticed on the list, Ohio's Welsh Byway is established. So that will share the stories of their evidence and their expressions of their culture. Maybe it's a historic thing in your area, like the Selma to Montgomery March Byway in Alabama. You could also think about the natural assets in your area, whether it's a trail, the Creole Nature Trail in Louisiana or West Virginia. West Virginia really has gotten the idea of tourism as economic development. There's a lot of really beautiful places to see there, and they're doing a great job marketing them. Could also be recreational, like we just talked about, whether it's active or passive. It could also be seasonal, like a skiing place that you might want to focus on. And again, scenic, whether it's natural or man-made, what is it that would draw somebody to want to come and see your area? And so our byway was once just one county, Morgan County, and we worked together to expand it into parts of 5 counties, all of 4, and part of a fifth, which is the leg up to the wilds that I mentioned. And we really focus on our natural resources, our museums, and our history, as well as outdoor recreation. And so the process that we took was we did an asset mapping. What are the things that we think people might want to come see? Then we worked through creating what's called a corridor management plan that the Department of Transportation requires. We presented that to the Byways Committee for consideration, and then they approved us as an expanded byway. And then I serve as the byway coordinator, and I do the annual surveys that they require. Our plan is available in this link here, and I can share these slides with Eric. But the byway management plan basically just asks some of these essential questions. What are your current conditions, your goals? How will you market? What are the things you want to implement, and who's responsible? It's really kind of a strategic plan for your byway. Our partners included the Ohio Association of Byways, which Ohio State Extension is a member, our county convention and visitors bureaus. Monroe County has a really strong parks district that is part of our partners, as well as we partnered up with Buckeye Hills Regional Council, our regional transportation planning organization. And so from a marketing perspective, we set out, as you see here, to kind of develop an icon or a logo, as well as brochures and a website. There is a formal ODOT website for each byway, and then we also developed kind of a localized one that I can update and add events. We found some funding and did a video, and the link is there for our video. As well as really focusing on getting out to events with the banners and doing car shows or festivals. We were at the fair, and then also working on building our visual assets. So making sure you have a really good bank of excellent photography that kind of shows people what can you experience along your byway. Part of that we did through an Ohio Tourism Co-op marketing program. This is an excellent opportunity for you to kind of stretch your dollars if you have limited dollars. You can apply for co-op marketing. You can do videos and storytelling. They'll help you do photography, as I mentioned, and help you look at what are your assets and how do you market those better. But if you have $500, they'll turn that into $1,000. So they'll match and help you with professional marketing people to do all of that for you. We also are present, obviously, on social media, and we try to do a lot there, as well as my background is journalism and public relations. So whatever you can get for free, pitching stories, writing articles, working with the state tourism office, making sure you're working with ODOT to promote, when they're doing things, is another great way. We've focused on some key magazines like Roadrunner magazine. As you see there to the far right, the little colorful lines on the state of Ohio. In our part of the state, there's some really sought after motorcycle routes. People want to come here and travel those routes. So we wanted to be sure we were in magazines where they would see that and come and see us. Also making sure that if you have assets related to tourism, you get those in the Ohio Tourism Database. This is a free process that then once they're in the database, you can pull up on their website, and you can also be a part of their printed materials by having your assets in that. Again, it's a free process. And then, getting out there with the travel bloggers and inviting them to come to your community. We had someone come and do a blog, and then that blog ended up in the Midwest Road Trip book about our byway. So again, these are free things that you can do. We've done some paid advertising, but limited just because our budgets are limited. But we did focus on like Long Weekend Magazine and Roadrunner, as I mentioned, and we're also a part of the Appalachian Coalition's pieces. We've done some limited grant writing, specific to the byway. Toyota does a Love Our Byways grant program, and we did some grants for a beautification project in one of our downtowns. And also the byway is award winning. We've tried to share the success of it with the National Scenic Byway Foundation, And also, I was pleased that they won a regional economic development award for tourism. So for us, what's next is we need to think about making sure our leaders know about the value of tourism. So we've been doing some lunch and learns. We don't have electric car charging stations on our byway, so that's something we need to pay attention to. Also thinking about expanding another county so that we can have a loop with the Ohio River byway. And then when we tried to go for national designation, they basically said we need to work better on our story. So doing more with our interpretation and our story. And I love this quote from Anatole France that says, "It's enough to open minds, but not to overload them. Where there's a spark, if there's something good, if there's some good flammable stuff, it will catch fire." So just going to be working for a while on, what is our story? And as Eric mentioned, community development is what we do. It's the act of making a place the best version of itself. And we find that tourism is a byproduct of good community development. These are some of my references, and this is how you can contact me. I think that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Gwen.
Sure.
And your sense is we can maybe figure out how to get a copy of those to share with attendees, because there's some great links and strategies in there that I think would be helpful. I don't know if you can do that, but
Sure.
that would be really great.
Okay, trying to figure out how to stop sharing now. There we go.
All
Is that
right,
better?
perfect. Thank you so much. I kind of I've kind of seen your video, and I don't know if we could kind of close out with that. I think that'll be inspiring to folks to see what's possible. If we do that, I would note, Gwen, that well, I can queue that up. Yeah, I can queue that up. If you don't mind sending me the link real quick, I'll queue that up. There's you got to switch on the video and audio, but just really well done product, I think. Yeah, so Gwen, I'm wondering, well, one thing I'm curious about is, so if I'm on this show or I'm watching with the YouTube channel afterwards, and I'm a community, and I'm kind of thinking about, that's awesome, all the things that you're able to accomplish, the awards and all that, but where do I get started? What would you say in response to that question?
Well, I think a big part of it is, collaborating. So finding out, what are the assets that you want to collaborate around? That's kind of where we started. Um, talking about the byway opportunity, but then, where could we collaborate? And that's really where the early conversation started, as well as, considering, does your community have some sort of a plan? Um, have you sought opportunities for public input and what your leaders want? Because those are important parts of the step as well.
Good. Let's see. I would do want to make a quick announcement. This is in your chat, but also just to say, if you have any questions, make sure you drop those in the chat. Or my phone number is 937-935-4844. If you have questions, you can do it that way as well. But just to continue down this road, Gwen, you've listed, so I think we're going to note, well, you've listed really a lot of the assets that are resources, partners to think about are listed in your in your PowerPoint. But I'm wondering if there's anything else you would say as to what resources. I'm a community that want to go down this road. I want to use scenic byways as a way to capture the tourism economy or piece of it. What resources are available to me to use to work with?
Yeah, I think, the National Scenic Byway Foundation is a treasure trove of information. The current executive director there is a former extension educator, And so she has a lot of really excellent fact sheets and trainings. I joined that. It's not very expensive. And so they have a lot of resources. They have a byway coordinator training once a year that was excellent that I attended. Ohio also has a byway association group. And from a heritage perspective, if you're looking at like a historic downtown, Heritage Ohio is a gem. I mean, they're again a pretty inexpensive membership organization that helps with tourism and Main Street information, as well as historic preservation opportunities. They do trainings on the historic tax credit process, whether it's through the state or federal funding. So those are some really good. And then, as I mentioned in the presentation, just Ohio tourism. Um, they will come and meet with you, sit down, talk to you about, what are you trying to do, what resources they have to help. They're an excellent resource, and that co-op marketing program, I think, is underutilized for sure.
Yeah, I was really curious about that in the presentation. Now, can you say some more about how did you get started with that relationship, and how did that work out?
Yeah, so like once a year or so, I think they put out a call for the marketing program. And as I mentioned, you can do photography, you can do videos. They have story writers, storytelling writers. I believe, there's just a variety of, they can do advertising. And you determine what you want, what level of spending, and you kind of pitch that to them, and then they approve you or not. And then they work with you in doing the contracts with the professional uh, vendors, I guess they would be. We worked with a professional photographer for our photo shoot who was just excellent. He helped us, from the beginning to the end on the process, and we got some really quality photos. I'm a good weekend take it on my cell phone kind of person with a photo, but sometimes you just really need a high quality marketing photo. And then they also do videos. We did our video with outside of the tourism process because I just didn't know about it at the time. But again, I think just connecting in and then making sure you're connected into the opportunities where they can know about your assets and they help cross promote them as well.
Um, as we look for some as other questions come in, just to say you do have now, if you happen to be watching from Noble County, uh, Gwen Stewart's your contact. Um, but if you're not, again, and you're looking for who could partner with us through a process like an asset mapping workshop to get the ball rolling. Again, feel free. We've got our contact information in the chat. My name is Eric Smith, esmith2@centralstate.edu. Ambrose Moses is amoses@centralstate.edu. And Amber Twitty is atwitty@centralstate.edu. Any of us are here and available, ready to help you, ready to serve. Um, and all right, thanks for that video. We'll do that in a little bit. Yeah. Okay, Ambrose, it looks like you've got a question. Oh, you're muted, sorry. And that
No,
is
I was
the other
saying
option,
I
folks.
didn't
You
even
can,
type a question in, but okay.
oh, well,
Sort
it
of
was,
telepathic there. So Gwen, I was just wondering, well, thank you for sharing with us today. And I was wondering, what are some of the impacts that you all have seen up to this point with the program? And it is part of the goal to bring new residents to those rural communities, or is it just to bring visitors for tourism?
So mostly the latter. I mean, we're focused on guests for tourism with this. Certainly, one of the issues we, like many rural communities, have with bringing new residents and or maintaining from a brain drain perspective is we have a real housing shortage in our community. So housing is an issue. But as I mentioned, because we're on the highway and because we are rural, we're trying to tell the story that there's a great experience to be had if you want to get out of the city, if you want to get out of Akron or Canton or Columbus or Cleveland for the day. You can come to the countryside, and these are some of the things you can do. We do have hotels. Some of our hotels were built during the oil and gas kind of uh, I guess the play of the oil and gas in the Marcellus portion of our state for pipelining workers. And so that process is kind of waning now. And so our hotels are here, they're still newer, but they're, experiencing a bit of a decline in occupancy. So that's something we want to pay attention to because we don't want to lose those hotels, hoteliers, obviously. So, and as far as metrics, it's difficult. One of the things I've learned is that there really isn't good research on scenic byways and how to capture people who are coming on that scenic byway. So that is something that we've talked about with the National Scenic Byway Foundation that the universities need to pay attention to, maybe do some research on for sure. We do know that, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of research on how your outdoor recreation assets can bring guests and can add value to your community. So if you have a state park, or for us, we have the Wayne National Forest, some of those iconic things, pay attention to how they can add value to your economy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Here in a minute, we can play the video that Gwen referenced. But Gwen, I wonder if you could walk us through the asset. You said this kind of the start of the process or early on in the process when you're doing the plan, when the first steps was sort of an asset mapping. So you just kind of, I understand that to mean you're kind of doing, looking at what are the historic or natural assets, the things that would get people out here. That's part of the first step in the planning process. I wonder if you could walk us through that and then how you turn that into an actual plan.
Yeah, sure. For us, it was really gathering those partners that I mentioned, folks from the CVBs and the Parks District in a room, and then just kind of going county by county and talking about what are the things that you either currently promote or you feel are under promoted, whether they were parks or other historic museums. We have some unique just small town restaurants, places where people would like to stop and get a bite to eat, that type of thing. So we kind of put those in, in a system, looked at those on the map, and then decided, what were kind of the top 2 or 3 for each county that we'd pull into the brochure. And then on the website with ODOT, you can list many more. And then making sure you had, like I mentioned, good pictures of those, a good write-up. What's the quick story that why would I want to go there? Like the downtown Caldwell Jail Museum, used to be the jailer's home and the jail. And so why would you want to go see that? It's, kind of a cool story, and a really neat little kind of tucked away hidden local museum that people maybe weren't knowing about. So, and again, our funding has basically just been, shoestring. Each of the counties kind of pitched in a little as we got started with doing some of the marketing pieces, because I have some funding through community development. OSU in Noble County is levy funded, so our taxpayers help fund our programs, and that's been helpful. But some of the byways around the nation, as you get into this more, you learn they do fundraising, they do grant making. There's a lot of opportunity for, specific grants for byways, whether it's through your state Department of Transportation or the Federal Highway Administration.
And I think, well, so if if you're a smaller community looking to adopt this, I mean, it sounds like you need to work with county and probably multi-county group, right? So that's what you bring to the table for that to start the process. And so, you figure out what you want to feature and focus on, and then what's the next step? Like there's a plan that you have to create, it sounds like.
Correct. There's a corridor management plan, and there's lots of examples that ODOT can provide on those. And I just kind of took the existing plan for the one county and then examples of multi-counties that I looked at to develop mine out. And they also have a consultant who can help kind of review and give you, tips on how to make it better. So we used that process, which was no cost to us. Um, and helped us a lot. He was an excellent resource. And then that gets presented to the ODOT Byways Committee for consideration, and the committee ultimately decides if they'll approve your byway or expand your byway or not. And then they can be a resource moving forward as well. And then you kind of update that plan with ODOT once a year. You give them updates on how you're doing, and then I think it's every 5 years you kind of refresh it and kind of review it totally with them and resubmit. And ours is essentially just a Word document with a variety of information. Now, some of the long-standing larger byways, hire a consultant and spend a lot of money on their corridor management plan. So you will see just a wide variety of depth and breadth of what's in these plans for some of the byways. But don't let that fool you. It doesn't have to be that to start with, especially if you're a small community.
Yeah. And kind of following up on Amber's question, so there's the impact and it sounds like at least in tourism industry, overnight stays is sort of like the gold standard, right? If you can get somebody to stay, or if you can just get a day tripper, that's one thing. But if you can get them to stay overnight, they're paying that bed tax, and then so that's kind of a goal, I would say. And so, but there's a question about like, does the community benefit as well? Just you shared that story of the jailer's house. Is there a side benefit of not just more of the bed tax dollars coming in, but is there a side benefit of the community feeling like there's that their local assets that they're proud of, that they're being featured? So does it affect the community culture and climate?
I mean, I think it does. I don't know that we've measured that necessarily, but I think there's a good amount of pride in seeing your area in something like a scenic byway website or brochure, and you can say, hey, that's kind of where I live. And it's a point of pride for me because it's the county where I work, but it's also the adjacent county where I live. And, when I lived away in Columbus for a couple of decades, I always enjoyed driving home in this rural area because of the beauty of the scenery. And so it gives me kind of a lot of pride to promote it to others because it is truly a beautiful part of the state. It's unlike, as you have traveled to Columbus and west, our state flattens out dramatically. The rolling hills of Appalachia are a unique part of the Buckeye State for sure. And I do think that it's helped in Noble County from a perspective of people wanting to pay attention to our historic assets. We've then had the conversations about developing a downtown historic district. Went through that process with Ohio, the Heritage Ohio folks helping, as well as Ohio History Connection. And now we have a district that's certified and on the National Registry. And then there's some other iconic buildings that we're focusing on that we want to make sure we don't lose and that we help fix up. We try to find, and then in that process, some of the other building owners have begun to just paint on their own and do some fix-ups because there's a buzz about preserving the history of the downtown, and I think you can't really put a price on that. But I do think, like you said, we're kind of monitoring bed tax and those revenues, as well as paying attention to some people are adding verbo sites in our county, which is new and innovative for our little part of the state. But I think the other thing to mention to the group, especially if they're interested in trails or other tourism, is that the Ohio Builds funding, we don't have guidance and details on that yet, but there are some planning dollars. So if you're thinking about a trail, or if you're thinking about something that you might want to do a study or do a feasibility on, you could do an application to secure funding through that process through those planning dollars, and then come back with that in the next round for some implementation dollars. Tourism and downtown revitalization, we're hearing, are going to be important parts of that funding that's earmarked for the Appalachian portion of the state, especially.
Yeah, wonderful. Great to know. Very good. Um, let's see. So let me ask one of my favorite questions. Standard questions I like to know is, I mean, what has inspired you the most, right? What's a story that's come out of this that, like, you know, you really connected to or resonated with?
Oh, that's a hard one. I've enjoyed getting to really know the historical society folks in our community. These are the folks who love the history, who love all of the details about, the downtown buildings and everything that's been in them, trying to preserve those assets. How excited they get. And I've had the opportunity to meet with some of the regional historic um, professionals, and I'm just amazed by what they do on how little money they have. They really don't have a ton of money, but they do a lot of preservation, and they're great resources for information. If you want to know something about a community, those historical people can connect you if they don't know. So I think that's been really cool. And then, like I mentioned, just myself going into some of these museums that I hadn't visited and just really seeing the depth and breadth of the holdings that they have and the things that um, they're they have on display are pretty neat.
Yeah, that's so cool. I
For
know
us
sometimes,
too, I'm a coal miner's daughter.
yeah,
My dad was a coal miner. My grandfather and my great grandfather were all coal miners. So, along our byway, there's the story of coal. You can see the big musky bucket in Morgan County. You can see how large some of the machinery was. You can learn about how coal has, kind of powered America. And it's still an important asset in our part of the state. It is, things are changing for sure with energy, but there's a great history of coal in our part of the state that you can learn about on the byway for sure.
no, that's great. Um, yeah, it just makes me think, uh, I know that when I take some time and really get to know a community or get to know my community, um, and really, it just gives me a different lens, and that was the quote you started with, right? A destination is not is never a place, but a new way of seeing, right? And so I think when you invest in what's there, what's present, what is our history and what's our cultural assets and natural assets, it gives us a sense of connection to our place. And I do feel like that is ultimately a great strategy just in and of itself, because if the people who live there feel more attached, place attached, right? Then
That's true.
that starts to stop that sort of drain of talent, that some in some communities is an issue. And so um, I feel like your impact is multifaceted.
And I think, as you mentioned, from a traditional economic development perspective, I heard on a program here recently that when a community is bringing a site selector in, if they're being considered for, a plant or, some new manufacturing or some new business, it's important that those people visiting see a healthy downtown, a clean downtown, that they see they have good experiences with people in the restaurants and the hotels. One of the neat things about some of the restaurants along our byway is they're, small mom and pop restaurants. Some of them make their pies fresh daily, and they're known for their pies, and people come, from miles around to visit them just for that quality hometown small restaurant fresh pie experience. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So there's just so much to offer, and it's a lot of it's how you present it, and I think having a scenic byway, river byway, whatever it is, but that having some focal point that you can tie that marketing to really helps. Um, and it makes me think too, one thing we really try to promote in our work is, just get something going. And success builds on success, builds on success. So just get started with, but I really do think, and Gwen, you've been at this a long time, but I really do think these are important assets that we have, the cultural natural capital that we have in spades. And so how do we harness that and get something going there? And like you say, then that just spurs other activity, like, oh, well, let's spruce up the downtown. And then that then gets other stuff going. And then pretty soon you start becoming a point of attraction for new talent as well. So I don't know if that's been your experience, but I just feel like, yeah, let's just, whatever it is, get started somewhere. And more will come after.
Definitely. I think we've seen, in our downtown Caldwell is our county seat. And so they've been doing some of this positive work. And then now we're seeing some of the smaller villages say, hey, can you help us? What can we do in Bell Valley? What can we do in Summerfield and Sayersville, which are very small villages, maybe 2, 3, 4, 500 people, but they have a need and a point of pride to do some of this enhancement as well. Our next step for Caldwell, we wrote a downtown revitalization plan through a grant with Buckeye Hills, and it really focuses on, like you said, placemaking, wayfinding, streetscaping. We don't really have a main street, so we're looking at maybe becoming a Main Street affiliate. Again, just kind of the next step so that when you come and visit, the benches are good. There's, good lighting. There's some flowers. There's, something visually appealing, as well as parking. We're paying attention to parking in that plan and a potential for electric charging station as well, so that they might come to the downtown to charge versus being out by the interstate with nothing to do, correct? So those are some of the things we're thinking about, as well as Wi-Fi, expanding, enhancing Wi-Fi capacity so that while they're downtown charging their vehicle or just, going from shop to shop, they can check their email, that type of thing.
Yeah.
People want to get unplugged, but they don't really truly want to be unplugged, right? We all know that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, folks, we're coming close to time, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to play this video. I love what, this is just one of the products that's been developed. It's just everything's, Gwen, that you've done and the team there has done has just been outstanding. And then this will give you time too. If anybody else has any last questions, we can probably get, one or two more in. So be thinking about that. Drop it in the chat. Send me a text. While we're doing that, I'm going to play this video, I hope. Let's go back here. Try that again. Oops.
Stop dieting. Seriously, don't bother dieting
Okay,
again,
sorry about
ever.
that.
Because you don't need to. If you really want to
Okay.
lose a serious amount.
You don't want that. Okay.
I think it's housed on YouTube, so there's maybe an ad with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, just make sure you look at the link and the other collateral material in the PowerPoint that's going to come to you, to the attendees. And while I've been doing that, on just any last questions that have come in that you may have for Gwen. I wish I could have. It would probably take me 5 minutes to go through Gwen's entire, the entire biography of resources you work with, groups you work with, things that you're on, awards you've won. So we just really appreciate your being with us today. And Ambrose, any last feedback, reflections, comments?
Well, I would just want to again just thank Gwen for sharing with us today, and I guess I sort of look forward to future conversations as we talk more about this development in the rural communities, and I think we're going to find some similar issues as I sort of reflect on it in some of the urban areas that are in need, where there's this need to bring people to these geographic locations to live. I mean, you have to have people to replenish and to continue building community. And just in some of the conversations that we've had in the short time that we've been a cooperative extension service, I mean, I just see that I look at an area and I'm thinking, well, where are the people going? And the folks who are the stakeholders, they're saying that, that the young folks are leaving, they're going to the suburban and the urban areas. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to talk more about, and how do we sort of get people to live, to relocate, and to live and to build. But that was just my little comments. I'll get off my soapbox now.
I draw a lot of correlation between the things that you were talking about with community development on a community level. So in the urban areas, you have these neighborhoods, right? And they want to become a destination point. So like I live in a community, 1 square mile. It's in that first ring of suburbs from the city of Cincinnati. And there's a mall on the other side, like a mile from my house, right? But you have all this traffic that comes through, but nobody stops in Silverton because it's not a destination. So when you talk about the byways and different kind of tourism or restaurants, or things that will get people to stop and support your local economy, that's where the opportunity is. And I think it's the same whether you're in an urban core or in a rural area. It's just, it might be a neighborhood versus a whole county, right? But it's the same thing. How can we get people to stop and support our local area? And when you have more people coming, people say, oh, this might be a nice place to live. And then organically, your population starts to grow. So I really like the things, Ms. Gwen, that you've been talking about. My teammates know when you talk about the infrastructure and transportation, that's like my baby. That's how I started in community and economic development. So I worked on the Portsmouth Bypass Highway, which is now the Veterans Memorial Highway, that completed the Appalachian system. So yes, I'm very familiar with how that can spur jobs. I mean, it's domino effect. So
And to your
kudos.
point, Amber, our mayor always says, quality of life matters for the residents who are there. And it matters for, as you're both saying, for attracting young people back or new people, either way. So, focusing, what makes a community that you want to live in, and focusing on enhancing those things is kind of what we've been trying to do.
Right.
And it does energize for sure.
Yes. So thank you for spending
Thank
time
you.
with us, and look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
And speaking of energize, when you always bring that to us, we appreciate you so much and appreciate your time here with us today. Thank you to everyone that's watching now, will be watching. There is a lot of great things to unpack from this, and just to think about, like Amber said, where I live, what kind of quality of life do I want to have, what I want to have, and then how do we build more of that into it, and then things start to snowball, and you start to see people wanting to visit, and then people wanting to stay or come back. So hopefully you got something out of this. Again, feel free to be in touch with any of us if you want to start your own path, your own journey in your community to create a place that's a place that people want to stay or to come to visit. Just be in touch with us. That concludes today's session and of Office Hour Live, and that concludes this September series of Heartland Rising. Thank you for joining us in September. And anything we should know about next week, Amber? Oh, and you're on mute.
That's Ambrose.
I'm sorry, Ambrose.
Next month, for CED Office Hour Live, we're going to talk with different professionals. So, in terms of entrepreneurs, be they agribusiness or general business, there are professionals that they should engage with. Legal, accounting, banking, insurance, and we're going to have some experts in to speak and share with us some thoughts and perspectives on those relationships and why they're so important and how you go about establishing those.
Perfect. So folks, you want to come back. It'll be an important month. All right, with that, again, thank you all so much. Thank you again, Gwen, and we look forward to seeing you next week.